Since his release in 2015, Tahm Kench has been repeatedly nerfed by Riot Games. His release incarnation was gutted because of his pro play viability, and he has since received 2 reworks to keep him out of the meta. Riot has tried their best to force Tahm Kench out of the top lane, preferring him to play as a tank support, but despite their efforts to nerf him, he continues to find his way back. This is because every part of his kit centers around being as annoying as possible to kill, from his oppressive CC to his insane healing and shielding. This video is about mathematically correct Tahm Kench, possibly the most annoying build in the game. I'll be showing you how to make an extremely tanky frog that will also outdamage your ADC. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to see more content like this. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers, and I have something cool planned for when we hit that milestone. Thanks to you all for supporting the channel. Now, let's continue the video. Tahm Kench is a member of the Warden class, a type of tank that prioritizes defense over offense. He's typically picked as a support, though Top Kench is still a popular pick despite the nerfs it's received over the years. His passive, an acquired taste, empowers his basic attacks and Q hits on champions to deal bonus magic damage and apply a stack of acquired taste, stacking up to 3 times. His Q and ult are empowered with extra effects on targets with 3 stacks, which are consumed on use. His Q, Tongue Lash, is a line skill shot that deals magic damage and slows the first target hit. It deals his passive's damage to champions and applies acquired taste, while also healing him based on his missing health. The bonus for consuming 3 stacks is a 1.5 second stun. His W, Abyssal Dive, is a short channel into a long-range blink, knocking up and dealing magic damage to enemies at the target location. When landing this ability on an enemy champion, a portion of the cooldown and mana cost is refunded. His E, Thick Skin, passively stores a portion of post-mitigation damage he takes as grey health, up to 300% of his maximum health. When this ability is not on cooldown, and after 4 seconds without taking damage, the grey health is consumed to heal him for a percentage of the stored damage. Actively, it converts all the grey health into a shield for 2.5 seconds. Thick Skin stores more damage when 2 or more enemy champions are nearby, which is Riot's way of forcing him into the bot lane. His ult, Devour, targets a nearby champion to swallow, attaching them to himself and making them untargetable and displacement immune. If he swallows an ally, he gains movement speed and grants them a decaying shield. To swallow an enemy, they must have 3 stacks of acquired taste. Swallowing them slows and grounds him, and his target is suppressed for the duration. After 3 seconds, or on recast, Tahm Kench spits out his target. Swallowed allies can choose to leave early by inputting a movement command. Swallowed enemies are dealt max health magic damage when spat out. Kench is widely hated because even when he's in a weak state, his kit makes it very annoying to fight him. He has excellent sustain thanks to his E and Q, powerful engage on his W, and an ultimate that can be used either defensively or offensively, saving an ally or locking down an enemy. His passive on hit makes his laning phase particularly strong, earning him a reputation as a lane bully. And while he doesn't scale like a Vayne or Smolder, he can still function as a CC bot and a pretty hefty meat shield during the late game. Today we're going to change him from a strong early to mid game tank that falls off late, into a hyper-scaling late game AP bruiser that's just as difficult to kill. The reason this video is being made at all is because I'm a wiki troller. I read through it for fun, and also for video ideas. I was looking for funky ability scalings, like the one on Set's Haymaker, and I stumbled upon this gem, Tahm Kench's passive, specifically the scaling for the damage on autos and Tongue Lash. The scaling formula has some pretty confusing phrasing, so I'll break it down for you. This part here is the level scaling damage, which goes from 6 to 48 depending on Tahm Kench's level. This scaling is linear, meaning for each level the damage goes up by the same amount. In this case, 4 extra damage per level up to level 11. We'll skip over this AP section for now, because that's the most complicated bit. The third part of the damage scales with 4% of Tahm's bonus health. For example, if Tahm Kench bought 2 Giant's Belts, each giving him 350 health, this would contribute 28 damage to his passive. The more health he gets from runes and items, the more his auto attacks will hurt, which is part of why he's such a strong lane bully. The AP scaling is the most fucked up part of this whole thing. 1.5% AP per 100 bonus health? What does that even mean, you may be asking? It's a rare case of twofold scaling, which is a name I just made up to describe this. Basically, the amount of one scaling value is directly linked to another scaling value. This is exactly what happens on Haymaker, except with the health scaling depending on bonus AD. If we have 100 bonus health, this ratio is equal to 1.5% AP. If we have 700 bonus health, it goes up to 10.5% AP. Notice how this is still AP dependent. If we have no AP in both these examples, the damage contribution from this part will be 0. If we had 50 AP in each example, the contribution would be 0.75 and 5.25 respectively. By combining these 3 sections, we get the total damage dealt by an acquired taste, which is entirely dependent on Tahm's bonus health and AP. The perceptive among you may have realized what's coming when I said this is exactly like Set's Haymaker, but for those of you who haven't, it's 3D graph time. A graph like this is great for visualizing a function of 2 variables, which in this case are bonus health and AP. If we draw lines where the graph is at a certain height, we get these curves that represent all the values of AP and bonus health that result in the same damage output. This curve, for example, is all the pairs of values that result in 200 damage. 400 AP and 1520 bonus health gives the same damage as 150 AP and 2432 bonus health. Looking from above, we can see the lines get closer together. This indicates the graph getting steeper, meaning the higher your passive damage, the easier it is to increase it. Fun fact, this is the same technique cartographers use to show elevation changes on maps. Contour lines, as they call them, are drawn in much the same way as my damage curves here, and communicate the steepness of a geological feature in a very intuitive way. The effect of AP is increased by the amount of bonus health we have, much like Haymaker, except we don't have to worry about any cooldowns, just attack speed. This actually brings me to my next point. Our attack speed also impacts the damage we deal with an acquired taste, since the damage is applied on hit. The higher our attack speed, the more we can apply the passive damage, and therefore the higher our DPS. This adds a third variable to our function, and since none of you can see into the fourth dimension, we'll have to do some trial and error to find the best build. There are lots of items that we can use for this build. Anything with AP, health, or attack speed will help us in some way. Not all items are created equally though. Some only have one relevant stat for us, so we're ignoring most of those. I narrowed it down to this list, which I'll link in the description for anyone interested. Let's start with the obvious options. We always want Heartsteel to get more and more health as the game progresses. Riftmaker is already a good item on Kench, and here it's no different, giving both health and AP, and a passive that gives extra AP based on bonus health. The combat Omnivamp is also pretty nice, especially since we don't have the tankiness of a normal Kench. Nash's Tooth is perfect for our build, giving both AP and attack speed, as well as extra on-hit scaling with AP. Warmog's armor also makes the list, having even more health than Heartsteel does, and a passive giving us insane out-of-combat health regen. Warmog's is very expensive though, and can be replaced by Rod of Ages if you want a slightly cheaper build, but if you want to be mathematically correct, go Warmog's. Rabadon's Death Cap gives an insane amount of AP, as well as increasing all your AP by 30%, and though it doesn't give any other stats, it's still worth it to maximize our damage. Our last item is Gwinsu's Rageblade, giving 30 on-hit damage, stacking attack speed in combat, and a phantom hit that deals extra on-hit damage. The phantom hit is the most interesting part. It activates after fully stacking the extra attack speed, and applies on attack every third attack, dealing on-hit effects to the target again after a 0.15 second delay. On average, you deal 4 instances of on-hit damage every 3 attacks, multiplying your on-hit DPS by 4/3. This doesn't account for the damage dealt by the basic attack, nor the ramp-up time, or any time spent using abilities instead of autos, but it's still pretty impressive, especially considering this build strength is all in the passive. I recommend for your build order, you go Heartsteel, Warmog's Armor, Riftmaker, Nash's Tooth, Gwinsu's Rageblade, then Rabadon's Death Cap. Heartsteel goes first, so we can begin stacking immediately, and Warmog's is taken second to stack Heartsteel even faster. Riftmaker is probably the strongest third item here, since it gives you good damage and scaling with the stats you already have. The other items don't have any health, so this also increases your Heartsteel stacking rate, as well as giving you a lot of survivability. The last 3 items can go in any order, depending on the state of the game, but you can't really go wrong with this order. For the early to mid game, you should buy some defensive boots, like Mercury's Treads or Plated Steel Caps, or go for Boots of Swiftness to stick to your targets. Buying Berserker's Greaves and building them to Zephyr isn't really optimal, since your on-hit build comes online during the late game with 5 or 6 items, and completing Zephyr is too expensive to be worth it. Our final build gives us 462 AP, 149.5% AS, and 4641 health, which results in an output of 964 damage per second through just on-hit effects. We can estimate we'll have about 600 Heartsteel stacks by the time we have full build, so we'll actually have 477 AP and 5241 health, thanks to Riftmaker's Void Infusion, giving us a DPS of 1141. This is, of course, not counting the stats we get from our runes. Our runes will be tailored to maximize our on-hit damage and be bad at everything else. We'll be taking Lethal Tempo, Legend Alacrity, and the Attack Speed Shard, for obvious reasons. To complete the Precision tree, we also want Last Stand and Triumph, to keep ourselves alive during skirmishes. For our secondary tree, we take Conditioning for the increased durability, and Overgrowth for the stacking health. For the other shards, we take Double Scaling Health, which somehow does more damage than 1 Scaling Health and 1 Adaptive Force. These runes are, in the end, just a suggestion. This build will function decently with the standard runes, but it's funnier to go Lethal Tahmpo. With the stats from our runes, including fully stacked Lethal Tempo and around 300 health from Overgrowth, we get 497 AP, 213.5% AS, and 6108 health, resulting in a DPS of 1929. The reason this is so high compared to the version without runes is because of the insane attack speed our runes give us, as well as the on-attack damage from Lethal Tempo scaling with our bonus AS. When fully stacked, Lethal Tahnpo gives you on-attack adaptive damage, in the form of a secondary bolt launched at your target. This bolt's damage is increased by 1% for a 1% bonus attack speed, which is actually a type of quadratic scaling, similar to how Mordekaiser's indestructible heal has quadratic scaling with HS power. A normal champion's auto attack deals 100% AD, and their DPS is described by this formula. If you have Lethal Tahnpo, you deal on-attack damage with each bolt, so your DPS is your auto attack damage plus your on-attack, all multiplied by your attack speed. Expanding this out gives you a quadratic equation for your bonus AS, meaning the more attack speed you have, the stronger each point is. Keep in mind that Lethal Tahnpo's extra damage is on attack, not on hit, meaning Guinsoo's phantom hit won't copy it. For this build, it's meant to be an afterthought, not the main mechanic, so we aren't worrying about maximizing attack speed. Mathematically correct Tahm Kench is a pretty decent build, all things considered. It gives you a good amount of survivability and damage, making him a viable AP bruiser with a wicked close-range damage output. I had a lot of fun gathering footage for this video, so go ahead and try it out in your games. For once, I've cooked up a build that isn't complete dogshit, so you can queue up guild-free. Keep in mind this build's weaknesses, being spaced out of your auto range and max health damage, and have fun shredding through anyone who challenges you. Speaking of challenges, on my mathematically correct set video I got comments saying I should have added a montage. Now I've never done this before, but it can't be that hard, right? Thanks for making it to the end. By the time this video goes out, it will be 2025, and nearly a year since I started making good content. My first video to pop off was my Camille video, which was basically a rant about how weird this game's code is. It's amazing to see what this channel has become, and I'm grateful that so many of you enjoy my content. Next year I'll continue doing this, and with all the changes announced for preseason, I'm sure I won't run out of ideas anytime soon. Happy New Year everyone, and thanks again for watching.